Adrien Bullier. I work in the European Commission in the part that is a European funding program called Horizon 2020. So I'm not in charge of the energy policy, the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. My colleague team is working on that, and he'll be speaking a bit later. I'm not in charge of giving haircuts either, sorry. But just a few things on what is going on, and indeed Luca asked me to speak about this because he thought, well, we can't be speaking just about the US and Japan. There's also a lot of things happening here. Well, very briefly, you've probably heard about the targets for 2020 on energy efficiency, which we're more or less in track to achieve, so reducing our energy consumption, well, improving our efficiency by 20%. We've got an objective of 27% for 2030, which we're in the process of renegotiating, and our rapporteur here will be very well aware of this because the Parliament and the Council and the Commission are in a discussion these days on this and a lot of other aspects of the clean energy package, which was issued in November. What we know is whether it's 27 or 30 or 33%, we will need to have a lot of additional investments in energy efficiency. And we also know that a lot of things are happening already thanks to the legislation already enforced by the European Commission on new buildings, for example. You know, by 2020, you can only build very low energy consuming buildings. Products, you don't find a fridge which is a C-class anymore. So appliances has been taken care of. A lot of, you know, if you're changing your windows today, they have to be usually double glazing. There's no way now you can buy single glazing. The big chunk that is remaining is building renovation. That's where the big potential is, and that's where we will need additional finance because we cannot do it with just people's normal savings. And the way to do this in Europe is to go to the banks. And this is where we need to have really a step change. And so what I do, my job is to work on energy efficiency finance. Now, I was thinking about this a bit later, and it sounds a bit like an oxymoron. When I talk, I've been working in energy efficiency for quite some time. And when you talk to the people working on that, they say, we've got so many great projects, building renovation, you know, our pockets are full of projects, but we don't have the finance for it. And then when we talk to the banks, most of you here, you're like, oh, we love energy efficiency. Money as a bank is not the biggest problem we have. We tend to have a lot of money, but we're looking for projects. And I'm thinking, you know, one of the reasons why I might be working on energy efficiency finance is because I like languages. Because in the end, we're not speaking the same language. Without any reference to recent events, it's a bit like the people in Brussels who speak Brussels English and the people on the other side of the channel who speak British English. They're speaking the same words, but they don't mean the same thing. When you talk about an energy efficiency project with a banker, he has very specific requirements in mind. So he will talk about transaction costs. He will talk about what is my IRR on this? How much money am I going to make? What is the level of certainty that I will get it paid back? And when you talk to a project developer, he's talking about, I'm putting 8.5 centimeters of insulation because that's really the best technical economic balance that I can find. And so they're just not speaking the same language. And I think the first issue we have to solve is we're not speaking the same language. What are we doing around this? In 2013, we set up the Energy Efficiency Financial Institutions Group. Peter Sweetman here on the first rank has been the rapporteur to the EFIG since then. We had about 120 people working together on energy efficiency finance and facilitating access to finance. And we came up with a great report in 2015, which has been maybe not the Bible, but at least one of the apocryph evangelicals to policymaking in on energy and energy efficiency since then. Read it if you haven't, but it was a great exercise because we had together in the room the financial sector, with the construction sector, with the industry, with consumers, with ESCOs, and the European Commission listening to whatever could be taken on board. And we're trying to replicate that also with a series of events that we're now organizing in the member states based on the same concept. Now, once we're trying to address this language issue, we still have a chicken and egg problems. So basically, we've got the banks saying, well, as long as I don't have a project, I will not give finance, and as long as I don't have finance, I will not be able to put my project on the ground. So we're doing two things with European money. With the help of the structural funds, we're putting about 38 billion euros in energy efficiency. That's ring-fenced money. That's about 3 times the money that was available in the previous programming period, showing that the Commission really made an effort, and there was a mandate to have at least 20% in some regions allocated to energy efficiency and renewables. So putting more money, and we're trying to put that in revolving funds, basically. And that is one of the 3 items we have put in the Smart Finance for Smart Buildings communication, which was launched with the Clean Energy Package, better use of public funds. So we know that grants are the predominant form of financing for energy efficiency today. We know that there will be grants in the future, but we need to have a better leverage of public funds to private investments in energy efficiency. Better use of public funds means we need to shift to loans and guarantees rather than a pure grant approach. And this is really one of the directions that we're supporting. Also with the European Fund for Strategic Investments, the so-called Juncker Fund, which is essentially a guarantee scheme. We're also putting money to develop the pipeline. So we're trying to create an egg so that the chicken will see that there's an egg. Meaning we're developing projects all over Europe. We're funding people to develop sets of projects which will be funded by private finance. In many cases, energy performance contracting and ESCOs are financing this. And the last bit of work that we're doing now in strong collaboration with the EFIG is a work on derisking, where we've produced a database of energy efficiency projects where we're showing that we've got over, I think, 7,000 projects now where there is investments in energy efficiency and there are good results which financially are performing, which we think is essential to show that there's a track record for energy efficiency, which doesn't exist so far. And the EFIG has also been producing a value and risk appraisal framework, which is basically trying to tell the bank, well, if you don't know about energy efficiency, here's how you could look at a project in energy efficiency, because there's a lot of technicalities which bankers usually don't need to know about, but they need to understand how to process them and what are the elements they will be needing. And so this is a guide which is going to be released actually on the 22nd of June in Brussels, and we'll also be making a lot of publicity on it. And I know that a number of the EMF members have been commenting on that guide. Now, to finish with that, why is it that we are funding, because in the end we're funding the development of this energy efficiency mortgage action plan? I have to say I'm very happy to be here because I started working on the issue of green value of buildings almost 10 years ago, including with some of the people in this room. And since then, it's really grown up. And now it's become just a market evidence for a lot of players. Investors, building owners, households, when they buy a home, they will integrate that if it's not double glazing, they'll have to change it anyway. And so they'll factor in the cost when they're making an offer. It's just simple as that. What is really interesting and why this project was selected in a very competitive contest where we have about 15% success rate, and this was really one of the best ranked projects we had, is because it's saying, well, this is happening on the market. It's obviously not reflected in the fundamentals of the banking industry. If we don't do it, as Luca is rightly saying, we might have an issue. If we do it, as a program, the fact that the banking sector might have issues, of course, is of concern to us as citizens, but it's not our target. Our target is to increase finance for energy efficiency. Now, if we reflect green value in the collateral and the green to value and the probability of default, then it's quite likely that we'll be able to give more grants, more loans, to energy efficiency. And this is why we think this project is really strategic. Why was it also selected is, I have to say, there's a great consortium. I've seen them at work already. The fact that we have the banking sector directly involved is great, but also that we have valuers with RICS, that we have utilities with E.ON, I think is really making a difference. The building sector through the Green Building Councils is also very strongly involved. So there's a lot, you have all the expertise that you need to develop such a complex project. And I'd like to say this is key from our point of view. The other point that was really made the difference is that there is really the will to integrate the input of market actors throughout the process. And I have to say this started even before they even knew they were going to be selected under our funding. But I've been to some of these meetings, including yesterday and in February in Brussels. This is really convincing because we can really see that people share their input, also their doubts. I've heard a lot of doubts, which is normal. But I find that this is really an added value of the project. So this is, in a nutshell, why I'm here today and why we are presenting, why we are selecting this project. And I would like to say also, I find it quite nice because it sounds like with such a project, the mortgage sectors and bankers could become the new heroes of climate change, which these days is, there's a spot to be taken. So I encourage you to go on. Thanks a lot.